Hello and welcome. This is the Parents Who Think debate show. I'm Danusha Malina-Derben, and today is episode 3 and the close of our first debate. Welcome back to Is Having a Favourite Child Okay? A quick preamble. If this is your first time finding your way to Parents Who Think, there's something you'll want to do to get the best and full listener experience. Trust me. Otherwise, it's the equivalent of diving into the middle of a Netflix series without any context and expecting to understand what's going on. If that's what you enjoy doing, stick around for this episode. If not, then circle back to part 1 and part 2 and give those a listen. Then you'll know who's who and how debates on PWT work. You'll also hear my 3 guests tell you snapshots of their life stories, the nub of their opinion on this debate in 6 words, and whether they believe their opinions are predictable, progressive, or polarising. Plus, I dish the dirt on where I'm coming from too. I found that especially excruciating as 4 of my 10 children recorded why they think they're either favourites or not. And then there's the fact that my other kids will listen in. Most important, we get into the meat of the debate, and my debate guests don't hold back. They're brave, vulnerable, and deeply honest. It's exposing stuff, talking about favourites for them and me. And that's why it needs to be done. Not to torture ourselves, but because knowing how other parents think is good. This is debate done different. Let's see how. Here's a quick recap from Peggy, Daria, and Jamie, my guests, from last episode. Then we'll move on to hear guests get into the if this, then that segment, and about the one habit they have because of their opinions. I close this debate by spilling the tea on Do I Have a Favourite?
We are humans and we cannot not, have a favourite. Because the way how we are wired as parents, we have the first child who comes into our family, and then the second and the third or whatever. And then we have the system that is a hierarchy system.
Parents should not make children feel that they're our favorites. Some children still feel it in some way, but I don't feel like children should have to feel that, because then they start to carry this stigma with them of okay, that's the favorite, so then what am I?
It would be impossible to love each one in the same way because they're not the same person.
Why is it impossible?
Well, because we respond in different ways to each one. I mean, you get an emotion or something that's struck, or a different feeling, or I think it's just sometimes you're just more magnetized in one direction.
In episode 1 and 2, we heard how Jamie doesn't believe that children should ever feel like there are favourites. Peggy readily admits to having one favourite because she says it's a pull that can't be resisted. Daria says having a favourite is inevitable, but that ideally we'd neutralise this situation. Seriously? That's such a broad synopsis that doesn't cover the tender nuances that each of my guests shared on this. But it'll have to do. The next segment is a crucial one. We sometimes forget to say or reveal or perhaps admit to ourselves. I call it if this, then that, because in any strong belief we hold, we have a picture or idea of what the consequences are of allowing something to be or happen. Oh, well, for instance, if we let our 4-year-old child stay up till very late into the evening, they might not be able to get up in the morning. The this is staying up into the late evening, and the that is not being able to get up. Or if we don't put our child in seatbelts in a car, then they may be thrown around should we be unfortunate enough to have a crash. The this is putting them in seatbelts, with the that being hurt in a crash. The essence of this segment is about the consequences of our actions, beliefs, or decisions. I ask my guests, if this, then that, about having a favourite child. Let's move on to if this, then that.
Okay.
If this, then that. So, for instance, if we let children swear, then they'll become foul-mouthed adults, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's that idea of, if you have a favourite, then what is the that that's happening?
That they would maybe feel inferior to the other person, which I don't think is necessary either. It's not that they're less because you're drawn to this one. I think they're just as much an amazing person, and it's just they all have their own different personality. They all have their special talents and skills and gifts. It doesn't make them bad because they're not the one you lean towards.
But what about not being number one?
Yeah, because then they feel like they're not.
They didn't make it.
Yeah, they didn't make the cut, but they're still beautiful and amazing. I think that that's even something that we all struggle with, feeling inferior to other people, to feeling like I'm not enough, or and I never want them to feel that way. But I think that's even something that's kind of caught up in our human nature. I think like some of the lessons we teach our children about jealousy, I think are a little incorrect. I think we should be teaching them to see jealousy as a good thing, that it shows you something that you want. I think that was something that someone taught us in the past, that it just shows us something that we want. And what it is, they're craving your attention. And I gladly give my attention to any of them.
Recognizing jealousy as information about something we want is really interesting. What's even more compelling is considering where we can learn jealousy as a positive skill. I wonder how many parents actively teach this. Then there's what Peggy mentions, attention. How many of us equate attention with love and favouritism? How many of us try to give out the same amounts of time and attention, or we might just look like we care for one child more than another? Do you equate this to attention?
I do. I think some of it is attention, and not just attention, the type of attention, because there are children who may get attention, but it may not be the type of attention they want, because they might have like bad behavior, or they may have like an issue with focusing. And so the attention that you give that child is going to be different from the child who sits and likes to color quietly or likes to sit and read a book. You might be able to have a different type of attention with that child. And so, like I said, children start to see and feel it.
I want to delve a bit into easier children, because you just alluded to it about the quiet child colouring in the corner. I just it's hard not to find them compelling sometimes.
Yes.
I feel that anyway, obviously. And those of us with children with special needs, who may be disabled, who literally require more attention. And, that causes, just because it has to, it causes an imbalance in the amount of time and energy that can be spent on children equally.
It's usually what parents consider the easier child for some parents. And then for some parents, it's the child that they have to spend more time with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm mother and carer of special needs children. I know about the intense and unrelenting attention it takes to navigate the truths of neurodiversity in an awkward, neurotypical world. Giving differing levels of attention in my family has nothing to do with love or favourites. It's about complex needs. But that's me, and your realities will not be mine. Do you think all children think attention kind of denotes being a favourite? I wonder.
I wonder too.
Yeah, how do they know?
Right. I think that when they see attention in general, I'm not sure that they even decipher sometimes whether the attention is good or or negative, whether it matters to them. It's just that the attention is on that child. And I think for them, it's the distinction like, okay, well, maybe that's the favorite.
Your point is really good about negative attention, because, of course, some kids just see that as any attention. Any attention is better than no attention.
In many cases, children learn very early on how to hide what really is inside.
What does in many cases mean? Some cases, most cases, or what? Some children, most children, or what? I didn't pin Daria down on this. Sorry. Do we all really secretly want to be the favourite? Or actually, are there gains to be had from not being concerned? I think that's just something to wonder about as we think about favourites. And so many people are trying to either make sure that no one feels that they're a favourite. I wonder how many people have progressive conversations about, yes, of course, there are favourites. Of course there are. Of course there are. Life's like that. Do we all start from the same place? No. We have feelings. We're always going to have very individual feelings about people.
I think if we're open with our own feelings and we're open with our own emotions and we see how we react to different situations, I think sometimes it's kind of obvious what's going on.
What people say is not always how they feel. And a majority of time, children would say, I don't care. But underneath, they care a lot, especially when it's going against, they're not in a favorite position. And they may feel very strong emotion of jealousy, but it's almost a rule, unspoken rule, not to express that, or it's not so cool, or it's, it's weak, or we have all intricate rules of communication about our feelings. And what Virginia Satir would say, the feelings about our feelings.
But it also takes courage to become aware of where we might have been in denial about things, doesn't it? And actually say, I'm actually changing my mind on that. I've changed viewpoint, rather than stick our heels in and become stubborn. Talking of a shift, after recording reasons why she knows she's favourite child, Harriet, my daughter, made this extra clip.
Thinking about being a favourite child and the topic as a whole has made me think that perhaps we all think we're the favourite child, which would be really lovely. Maybe we all feel like that. I know that I haven't spoken to all of my siblings about it, but I know that Tom, for one, thinks that he is the favourite child. And maybe that's great. Maybe we're all deluded and we all have our own gorgeous special bond. And that might be exactly the right thing.
Isn't this a beautiful catch? Gentle and loving, a seismic reframe. So let's go to if this then that, because I want to know, if you did have a favourite, what is the that would happen?
If I had favorites, I think that I would see in my household what I am starting to see with my children and my other family members now. Like that whole, there's like that they love each other, but there's a disconnect in even trying to have a good relationship because one side feels that the other side is the favorite. So if I had favorites in my household, then I feel like my children would be disconnected from each other. I don't know that they would have such a close connection. The older two are literally like best friends, and the younger two are definitely not, but they are because they're so close in age, but they're growing to it. They start to play together a lot more than they were playing together before. But I do believe that there would be a lot of dissension between them if I visibly had favorites.
How would that leave your children, individually and collectively?
Individually, they may stay to themselves and like not, for instance, may not come home for holidays, may not want to be around the family for like Christmas or Thanksgiving. Collectively, you may just see them start to pull away from each other. So in a household where they live in the same household, for instance, one might constantly stay away from the other, or there might constantly be arguments, dissension, some type of like things that may not have normally been an argument become an argument simply because one feels like the other is a favorite. So it might not even be a big deal. Like, oh, who ate the last bit of cereal? You're always eating the last of the cereal and you never get in trouble because you're the favorite, right? It's not a big thing, but it becomes a big thing because they start to feel that favoritism.
Yeah, they're being treated differently. The impact of their behavior is seen differently.
Yes. Some kids start to close off and stay to themselves because they feel like that child can say whatever they want to say and they never get in trouble because they're the favorites. But the moment I say how I feel, then I'm going to get in trouble. And so I'm just not going to say anything. I don't want a household that way. I don't want a household where a child feels like they're alone and they can't speak what they feel to me. And so definitely that's my this and that.
You just gave me another a layer to think about, because this favoritism in like a league board, sort of like it's a scaling system, like at school in a way. It's like who's number one, who's number. It's a hierarchy in terms of our value system, because it's not necessarily success in terms of I don't know, academic success, or maybe it's internal quality that we value so much, and because of that we put that person, a child in our league, higher up. But that's again is a very similar system to how the education system has been for 200 years, like industrial revolution. Very much it's all about ranking,
Yes, exactly.
and we are products of these educational systems. That's why I chose for my children to go to Waldorf Steiner school, just to escape that, windmill and rat race of competitiveness and I'm good, you're bad, kind of thing, right? And I am still part of that system. I grew up in that in traditional educational curriculum system, so I only know so much. But I'm trying to loosen up the system following me with my children. Let them have the baton, and maybe they will do something different.
Whether a teacher thinks you're a favorite or shows you
Mm-hmm.
favoritism. So they'll be vying for a position at school. Sometimes, what I've heard from some people about this favorite piece is that even if the parents didn't show that they were a favorite, some people have a grandparent or someone in their life, like a teacher, who did treat them as a favorite, and that has boosted their confidence. What I asked Jamie next is adjacent to if this, then that, but it's more the flip side. In other words, it's the opposite of what's the consequences of favourites. Given she doesn't want any of her children to feel there are favourites, I ask this. So what's the state that you want your children to feel?
I think the state that I would want them to feel is security or safety. Just like that feeling of like, I'm okay, I'm good. There's nothing that I can do or say that will change mom's view of me. That I'm always going to be one of her favorites, right? Because I always call them my four loves. That they will always remain no matter what. So I want them to just feel that security, that no matter what they're doing, their position with mom is secure.
One of her favourites? Did you catch that, or am I the only confused one? Okay. She calls them all her four loves. Right. Got it. Is there nothing that they could do, Jamie? Nothing.
I don't think so. Like the older two have done some things. Of course, as a parent, you want them to like stay on a certain path and do things a certain way. And when that goes against the grain of what you want for their lives, it makes you like, oh my goodness, I wish that they would have done this thing, or I wish that they would have stayed on this path. But it doesn't change like their position in your heart. They don't then become your least favorite because of, the thing that they did. So it's just kind of like we're still learning. I think it's hard for us as parents to say sometimes that like I'm still figuring this thing out. I don't got it all together.
So I really just love the fact that you said that.
And I don't believe any person on this planet has a total job done on this one. Because it's impossible, it's inevitable. We have this favor, so we can only move a little bit towards the state of better, how we can be less judgmental, less favoring some parts of us. That's it. But it is inevitable that we will. So much so that it creates huge problems.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, the mental health issues mostly come from families of origin, where the problem in family dynamics is, I mean, we've seen so many cases of schizophrenia, of bipolar, of autism, of when it's developed, right? We have different mental health, depression, anxiety, even, tics and bulimia, also as a consequence of some strong malfunction and dysfunction in the family of origin that happens in most cases through generations, where people don't work on themselves and they just pass on the same patterns of problems to the future, children. So what I'm saying is that it's not just a little problem, it's a big problem.
This is a debate about favourites, so I didn't pick up Daria's thread about the conditions she mentioned existing because of strong malfunction or dysfunction in families of origin. I'm pretty sure in another debate there'd be pushback. Let's just say from those of us in neurodiversity communities. Here's Peggy on humanity.
I'm going to have flaws. I'm going to have, ucky spots. I'm going to be, there's going to be times where you're not on your game, but maybe that's just our humanity. But I mean, I love and adore all of them. I don't think you can compare one love that you have for one person is any more special than the way I love them. It's just a different type. I think we have so many different levels to ourselves and so many different, it doesn't mean that because you love one in a slightly different way, it doesn't mean that it's less.
I had this one question, especially for Peggy. I just had to ask. I had to know. Do you see more of your miracle?
Actually not, no.
Oh, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. You don't?
No, because life keeps us busy and you don't, I probably see her maybe once a month or so, but I have another child that lives with me now, even though she's just turned 27. And my boys, I go and I visit them. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily work out that we're together every day we're in contact every day. I mean, she's sending me texts and letting me know what's going on and if they need anything. And I probably equally talk to the others as much. So, except for the oldest. Now, my oldest is severely autistic, so communication's not his thing. So.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep, got it. It was time to ask Daria straight. Well, as straight as I get. So if you do have an inevitable favouritism, then what comes from that?
Well, acceptance is the first step, right? So we cannot change anything unless we accept the fact that it exists. And inevitably favoring somebody, we basically favor in some parts of us that we like, and we disown those parts that we don't like inside ourselves. So what it means is we need to really embrace the internal world, and there's a whole therapy called IFS, internal family systems, or that comes from Satir world, Virginia Satir. How do we embrace all parts of us? I have an incredible exercise. It's called Parts Party. It's the party of our inner parts. We have the parts that we hate about ourselves, and that's why we don't like these parts presented in our children. And some parts that we adore, and when we see those parts in the children, oh, that's so sweet. So just accepting and learning these things about ourselves and doing some inner work with the help of professional and group settings and their own. So for me, it's just a journey of learning those parts of us and looking at the mirror of our children, connecting to parts inside.
So this favouritism, from your perspective, will it always be inevitably problematic? even though you've said it's inevitable because of our family origin stories and our parts work, the pieces that we disown and adore and all of that. But essentially, what's the result that you would want to see if you could eradicate favoritism? Is that it?
The main thing for this to change is to help us raise our self-esteem, self-worth, a sense of self-worth inside us. Then we do not need to compare and belittle, disown, disrespect, dismiss, or reject or criticize anything of that. So we can take a different stance. And that's the major piece of work for everybody is how do we lift and how do we work? How do we raise our self-esteem? Really, not appearing confidence, but the sense of inner state of self-worth, self-esteem. And that's a $1 million question.
What I really love about what you're saying is that at this point where we are, and certainly when you're talking personally, you're acknowledging favoritism exists. Yeah. That if we collectively worked on all the pieces that you are talking about, then there is hope that favoritism may not be the subject of a debate. Let's sum things up, shall we? Now, Peggy's If This Then That is all about the risk of having children feel inferior and less loved. But she's sure that love for each child is different because love for people can never be the same. Now, Daria's If This Then That is about the need to do the inner work to make sure we don't disown the parts in others we dislike in ourselves. Our favourites and ones who are potentially not favourites for her come from looking at the mirror of our children, connecting to what's inside ourselves. Now, Jamie's If This Then That is all about the disconnection and dissension that comes of having favourites, or even children feeling there might be favourites. For her, it needn't be a reality. If kids feel there's a favourite, there's potential for discord and damage. And that brings us to the next segment. What's the one habit you have because of your opinion on this topic? Now, our beliefs influence our behaviour and determine our actions, which is why I want to hear about my guests' habits. What habits come from their beliefs? You'll find we talk of several habits because once we get going, it was hard to talk about one habit as a separate thing. Let's get started with Peggy and her habit. What's one habit that you have because of your opinion about having a favourite?
One habit?
Yeah.
I guess maybe, I guess it reminds me to reach out to the others because sometimes they don't come to me like my one child does. So I have to go to them. So maybe that's the one habit that I've acquired. I've learned I have to pursue them a little. If I want to talk to them, I have to be the one to call and I have to be the one to text and I have to be the one to go over.
Yes. Yeah. So you have to initiate that contact.
Yes.
Whereas it flows, does it?
Yes. And my other child, she jokes around when she tries to call and I'm busy doing something else. And she's like, well, what are you doing that doesn't involve me? So who's more important here? I'm like, okay. And so it's become a bit of a joke.
Yes. You mean you have a life?
Yes, I know. What was I thinking? Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's funny. So does she talk about being the favorite to you?
Well, because it's been brought up to her that, with the others. But she gets along better now with her brothers, so that's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Spends more time with them and brings them dinners and food and, because they would happily live on fast food or prepared meals, that sort of thing. So
I was just going to say that. So she's looking after them.
Yes. She cooks for them a couple times a week and everything. So that's good. I'm glad to see that. But they still, still have the occasional upset with them. But then that's more between them.
Peggy reaches out to initiate contact with her children who are treasured, adored, and loved, but aren't her miracle. This makes sense. To make connection, to keep in touch, and be beside them. That's her habit because of her opinion about favourite children. Let's hear about habits from Jamie, who's also mother of 4 children.
The one habit I feel like I have is that I try to spend time with each of them individually, but both of them them all collectively as well. So as individuals continuing, because like I said, I have 2 adult children and 2 small children. So getting to know all of them individually at exactly where they are right now, but also having them all come together collectively and just seeing what that looks like with all of us as a family and how I treat everyone collectively so that they continue to feel like, oh, there's love and mommy shows us all attention, just different. She loves me for making her laugh. She loves me for, giving her a good book review, or she loves me because I am a great poet and whatever. But that's the one habit I have, and I feel is a good habit, is to constantly just like bringing them together so that they can see that there's no favorites. I love you all.
How do you split yourself, given you've got 4? How do you allocate your time to do that, to have those individual 4 times, spaces, and then the collective? How do you do that?
It can be different days. It can be something that I do, especially with the little ones. I do it in the same day. So I'll say, okay, what do you want? What do you want, mom, and your time to look like today? And my son might say, I want to play Uno. And that's quick and simple, but that's his time. That's what he chose. Whereas my daughter might say, I don't need your time right now, but I want it when it's time for bed so you can read a story to me because I love the way you read stories. That's her time. That's separate. They're 2 individual different things. But then when we go out, it's like, okay, let's figure out what we're going to do as a family. Oh, we're going to go on this trip and we're going to go to the movies. We go to a movie, we go to eat, and we talk collectively at dinner. Like, just trying to make sure that whatever activity we're doing, that I'm still showing them all, some type of attention.
Yeah. How do you, the movies activity is a great example. How do you decide on the film when you've such different ages? How do you gain agreement? I find, because I have triplets, my youngest are triplets, and even amongst the triplets, they're like, oh, no, I hate that kind of film. No, I like this one. Oh, my gosh. We go round in circles.
Mm-hmm.
Forget the others, which I have more, obviously, but I just, even amongst that little batch.
Right. So even like with the boys and girls are very different, because my son will say, I don't want to go to a sing-song musical ever. Like, don't take me to a sing-song musical. I'm like, what's a sing-song? He's like, Frozen and, all the ones that sing all day. I don't want to go to those. And my daughter is like, I love those and I don't want to go to like action or scary movies, which clearly is fair. Right. And so we kind of look at things that we all collectively would like to see. So me and my daughter go separately for the movies that he doesn't want to see. So we went to see Wish recently, but then there were other movies that were coming out. I think one is called Migration, and then when the Sonic movie came out, those are movies that collectively they said, oh, okay, we both are interested in seeing this movie, so we go to those. Or the easier way, when no one wants to decide, is everyone put their movie in old school. Put your movie in a hat. We're going to shake it up, and whatever comes out, that's what we're going to do. And okay, well, we'll go see this movie. And the child that didn't get their movie picked gets to pick dinner. So we'll go to where you want to go for dinner.
Nice.
The older 2 don't care. They'll go with whatever the younger 2 say. So it doesn't become a big thing, thankfully.
That's nice. I like the giving the disappointed child, basically, the food choice.
Right. Especially the sons who don't want to go and listen to songs all afternoon. They're like, okay, after Frozen, can I do something I want to do?
Wow. I mean, it's a juggle, isn't it? And as you're talking about the allocation of time and the process by which you do it, I'm also thinking about single parents. And I'm thinking, the challenges of trying to allocate similar kinds of time or times of day, and also juggling our own energy levels and our interest, in something. One of the more difficult ideas for parents to wrap our heads around is the suggestion that children do not need, as a general rule, a lot of attention. As many a psychologist who will tell us children need freedom. The freedom to explore, to imagine, to create, and to take things apart and put things together. Of course, this freedom must have boundaries, but providing this in the context of an environment that encourages exploration is said to be more important than giving lots of attention. That's one proposition to counter our attention-led parenting. Meeting a child's need for freedom within boundaries minimises the possibility that the child will ever act starved of attention. When attention is equated in the child's mind with love, the child can sometimes feel safe only when they are the centre of attention. Which is why I asked about the ins and outs of how Jamie balances giving attention to her 4 differently aged children. Now, right at the end there, I mentioned an elephant in the room. The way parents juggle not only our energy levels, but also our actual interest in watching certain movies or doing specific activities. Now, let's not talk soft play centres, one particular form of parental torture, unless you like them.
And I've been learning how, not to hide, but how to also transform my position instead of a little bit like a spectrum, sort of become a bit more welcoming, a bit more meditative, a bit more mindful, a bit more aware, a bit more zen about it. And that's why I practice and I do psychology, mainly for myself, how to embrace all of them and how to embrace each of them and find the diamond inside each person. I believe there is a diamond, so we just need to polish and get that, to the core. But if I'm stressed and hungry, I see the outside. I don't see the diamond. So I need to get to my state of calm and peace for me to connect with the diamond. And that is the self rather than just the behavior.
So your relationship with yourself is critical in terms of that steadying, as you say, that calm, zen, ideally, but it shifts when you're not. And therefore your response to the children, whether you can access and even perceive their diamond, will change and I guess oscillate, won't it? What's one habit you have because of your opinion?
Well, my habit is to watch my words. So what I do, I try to speak very little with my children when I'm in front of both of them or 3 of them or all of them. And I watch my words not to say anything about the other. Because if I praise, there's always this like, what if I don't perform? My mom will not praise me. So my habit is to watch my words and try to just hear what I say, and that's it. Because every word I say, it's taken as in a jar of like self-esteem growth, or taken from it. I see. So I'm trying to use my words to put in a jar of self-worth. And one of my favorite is, the world is better because you're in it. And I want this for every child and every person. The world is better because you're in it. You're with it. You are born into it. And looking at the diamond, just watching my words for it.
Daria's habit of watching her words is a reminder to us all. Let's hold "the world is a better place because you're in it" close. Who wouldn't want to hear this? Who wouldn't want to say it? I wonder what my own childhood might have been like if I'd known this. How about you? In episode 1, I dished the dirt on my relationship to favourites. I promised I'd circle back and say more here in episode 3, in the Last Words segment. Here we are. There's this quote by prolific author Tim Lott that helps me. It goes like this. I didn't much care about hanging out my dirty washing because I believed that opening up our private worlds was a way to establish a greater intimacy between all of us. When I stopped chewing over which debate should be the first one on Parents Who Think, I felt settled that I'd chosen something less incendiary than other ones coming up. I liked this topic because it didn't feel like too much to handle in a podcast where I'm learning skills beyond ones I've handled already. I thought, what a great idea this one was. Not hard at all. I couldn't have been more delusional. Was I in cloud 9 when I dreamt this up? But I was so close to the trees I couldn't see the wood. How did I miss that we're talking about favourites, the chosen ones, specialness, worth? Somebody hit me over the head with a big box of Lego bricks. I've woken up worrying over this topic more times than I've had McDonald's in the past 3 months. My triplets are worryingly fond of Golden Arches, nuggets and fries. I've been trying to figure things out, like how to say how I actually feel about the truth of my own feelings, alongside the delicate truth of my children's feelings. How do I express the loving, nurturing mother part of me while simultaneously wanting to truth everything to the ground? Not for the sake of it, but because truth needs air. I'm haunted by being true to myself, and the purist in me wants that badly. But I know bells can't be unrung. I'm a parent who has been rethinking choices I made in my earlier parenting that I'd not choose again. Self-forgiveness is needed for that. It matters that my rethinking about my earlier, obvious then parenting choices have been painful and exhilarating eventually. But here today, I get the chance to thoughtfully, lovingly and truthfully say what I think about favourites. Telling stories that aren't solely our own, or even mostly this, are torturous to handle. This debate reminded me of this question. Is having a favourite something we feel inside but don't express, or is it an expression of a set of behaviours that show our favouritism? You heard some of my children share how they see themselves as my favourite. A look, time shared, a knowing. Is it a depth of knowing one another, an intimacy, a feeling of being met in different ways? I really don't know. It's fraught. I find this topic and experience of talking about it the biggest joy and darkest depth. I've sobbed more hours over this favourite thing than anyone in my entire life guesses. I was advised by a PR friend to fudge answering this. She suggested I say the words, "Only kidding! Of course I'm not going to tell you if I've a favourite child." I dislike that immensely as it's a setup. Why ask others to talk on this topic but avoid it myself? That's not me. My mother instilled the word backbone in me. Ask me what I've asked others. Go on. Do it. No, really. Danusha, do you have a favourite? I've had different favourites. Some lasted years. Remember, I have children who are self-sufficient through to primary school aged ones. I felt emotionally closer to some children, while with other children, I needed to work at intentionally creating what John Gottman would call bids of connection. Our connection wasn't as natural and flowing, so I put connecting with them down on my to-do list. It would say this: make effort to go out with or talk with X. My kids never saw those lists. I had to schedule this in, whereas with favourites, it flowed. They sought my company We enjoyed one another organically. I've learned that, like any love affair, things ebb and flow. In case you're white with horror, I'm aware we don't have romantic love affairs with our kids. Except they are love affairs. In love, there are quiet moments where we're in stillness with one another, holding moments where we might pick fluff off a jumper, and intense crescendos that we need to rest back gasping from. These can be from hardships we've shared that lesser favourites don't realise are even happening. Or they've been from laughter. This can't go on forever. It has to stop one day. Favourite children for me involves loss. I'm no longer someone that some once were favourite children call when they've news they're thrilled about, or even call much. Not a person they want to share time with or experiences with. For them, I think my presence in their life is that I'm more in their past, or to do obligatory year events with, laced with duty. Some would say that's normal, healthy. I don't care for other people's take on how I ought to feel. They're not inside my heart. I find it devastating to have once been a favourite mother, a favourite, but to feel now relegated by some. Does it affect how I feel? I'd love to say no. It's not my experience. The myth that a mother doesn't possess ordinary emotions like everyone she's trying to nurture and support is a pernicious one. Yes, it affects how I feel about favourite children. Of course it does. How's a human who was once held as important but now shifted to a different place meant to feel? Is this really about favourite children? Isn't it about the children or child who made us their favourite too? Is it only a one-way thing? Because I find it impossible to believe that children who don't show liking of their parent will be chosen as the favourite by that parent. Why would a parent choose to favourite a child who isn't interested in them? Or doesn't seem to get them or like them? Is it instead about reciprocity? My previous favourites seem to like me. If they change this view, no longer giving time to one another or being thoughtful, they slip. But I want to tell you that I no longer see favourites as important. I did. My favourites killed that in me. What I will say is this. There's one child I reversed my sterilisation with. I endured hours of fallopian tube microsurgery to reinstate my ability to have a child. This child was the focus of the most intentional efforts and dreamed about life. This child is so loved. There is another child of mine I long for. And another different one I understand to the marrow. And yet another different child I hope holds my hand as I die. And another one no one knows I chat so much with. I'm privileged to be getting to know another of my children deeper than ever before. As a child I lost a long time ago, who I treasure, but this isn't my stillborn daughter. Yet another one I've not mentioned, who is everything and everyone to me. But I can't not mention this other child I cherish like my own inner child. I've learned to do this, and they benefit. Finally, there's this one child who needs to be my favourite. I do this for them because I can. I have favourites. 10 favourites. I adore each. My heart feels that. But do I show this equally? No. I didn't go to a class to figure out how to do that well. I'm human, and that has to be enough. What my 3 guests and I show tenderly is the back and forth between having different feelings for our children and worrying that they'll be hurt by this, by the recognition of something unexplainable that just is, but the mind trying hard to find logic and fairness and equity. And for some, going with what is becomes the only way through the is having a favourite child okay trip of a lifetime. Life is messy. Love too. Let's say farewell to this favourite child debate with some final words from my wonderful guests, Peggy, Jamie, and Daria.
I still love them to the moon and back. I still treasure every moment of them growing up, and I treasure every moment that I get to spend with them now, even though now that they're big and I don't see them every day, but when we do get together, I still love them and want to squeeze them and all the gushies. And I still want to give them everything they want. I want to bring them the treasures of the world if I could. I would love to make the rest of their lives perfect. And if you could do such a thing, I would gladly sign up for that program. Yes.
I love the 4 of my children. I just love them all. I love you all.
I think there is hope. I always have hope for humanity. I believe there's part of us that's so wise, that's so beautiful, that's so all welcoming and loving, that we nurture in this part, like what you're doing, evoking this kind of conversations, provoking and triggering, really thinking, but also feeling and behavior changes. And hopefully we can create healthier families so that we can heal the world by doing that piece of raising self-esteem. And in the end, it naturally eradicate favoritism, because self-esteem, when it's high, there's just pure love.
What did you learn by hearing 4 parents tell you the insides of our relationship to favourite children? Did this debate make you think? I'm so glad you were here for this opening PWT debate. Our next one lands in a couple of weeks. I'll be joined by 3 more parents who'll share their opinions on another hot topic. We'll be debating, are we creating mollycoddled kids? I hope you'll join us for that. If you'd like to react in some way to something you heard, I encourage you to join the Parents Who Think Substack community, or on our new YouTube page, funnily enough called Parents Who Think. Thanks for being such a great supporter of the show, and tune in next time for more valuable conversation from PWT.